name's Steve Todd. I'm District Superintendent in Jefferson, Lewis, Hamilton, Berkeley, and Idaho. And when districts search for a new superintendent, they often ask me to help them. And it's my privilege and my pleasure to do that. I facilitate, I help them with the logistics, gathering the applications, doing the advertising, and any way that I can be helpful. But at the end of the day, the Board of Education, it's their decision and their determination. And I've got to tell you, you've got an outstanding board here. I'm very impressed. This is the 13th superintendent search I've done in our region in the last 5 years. Oh, did I miss you on feedback sheets? Oh, louder. Okay. I'll talk a little louder. I use my teacher voice. So this is the 13th search that I've done in almost 5 years. Been a lot of turnover in superintendents around the state and in our region. And what I can tell you is this has, without question, been the smoothest because your team here in this district is so the support that they've provided to the logistics and the smoothness and making sure everything runs really beautifully has been very impressive. And I want to thank the board for the privilege of being able to work with them over the last few months. And this is the most important thing that the Board of Education has to decide, selecting the leader of the district. And they've taken this very seriously, and I commend them for the hard work they put into reviewing all of the applications and doing first-round interviews, and now bringing forward to you and the school community 2 excellent finalists that you'll have an opportunity to interview this evening. And so each of the 2 candidates will be with you for about 45 minutes. I'll bring Rebecca Dunckel-King in first here in just a second, and I'll invite her to tell you all a little about herself, what brings her here and what interests her in the position, and then we'll open it up for questions. And you can ask anything you'd like to ask, and when we get to about 45 minutes, we'll wrap things up and we'll do it again. We'll check it out. Now, did I get everybody one of these feedback forms? You'll notice it's very nondescript and open-ended, and that's by design. We didn't want to tell you what to tell us. We wanted to leave it open so that you can give the board any and all thoughts and feedback you might have about either or both of the candidates. This is exactly the same feedback form the students had first thing this morning. You'd have been so proud of them. They were remarkable. You have the best kids here. They're incredible. 45 minutes, they asked the best questions of both candidates. Their feedback form looked the same, and so did the one for the teachers and the non-instructional staff and the administrators. And all of them, just like yours, I'll ask when you leave here, and I'll give you one exactly like this for the second candidate, Tina Lane. If after each of them, if you could put them back or give them back to me or slide them into the envelope that I'll put right on the corner there, these will all go to the Board of Education for their review. We don't filter or censor or sort. They go straight to them in raw form, and they will see everything you choose to share with them. And that's important information as they make this the most important decision you're going to have to make. And so I thank you all for being here tonight and for the privilege of being able to work with your district. And now I'm going to get out of the way and allow you to have a conversation with Rebecca Dunckel-King. It's my privilege to introduce you to Rebecca Dunckel-King. I'd ask you, Rebecca, if you'd like to maybe lead things off by sharing with folks what brings you here, what interests you in the position, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
I had a key to the school.
Yep.
So I want to walk there. All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Hey, you were here before. No, I really appreciate it. I know it's hard to break yourself away from this new spring weather that we're having right now, but I do appreciate your time. So I'm Rebecca Dunckel-King, and I am, well, I know most of you. I think I know all of you. So this is good. I'm here. I've been an administrator for about 10 years. I've been a superintendent for 2. Right now I'm the superintendent at Remsen, which is a fantastic district. A lot of great things happening there. But I live in Lowville, and my kids go to Lowville. And next year I'll have a child in elementary school, middle school, and high school. So it's a perfect opportunity for me to come and do as much as I can to impact students, give them opportunities themselves, and really engage with the community throughout this, well, what would be 15 or 16 years until I retire. So it's quite a long, it'll be a long position. But anyway, that's me in a nutshell. unless you want me to go way back to when I went to St. Peter's, but we can avoid that if you'd like. So, that was easy, thanks.
So, Rebecca, talk to us a little bit. Lowville has a history of kind of being a community center, being involved with the community, cooperating with the community. Let's start there. I mean, obviously we're going to focus a lot on student-related items, but talk to us about your thoughts about the community and how the school relates.
Yeah, absolutely. So the school is doing a lot of great things in terms of opening up the district for community members. You know, you come to any soccer game or play, you see people who graduated years and years and years ago coming back and showing their support for the school. So I think we're doing a really good job of inviting the community here. I think we can do a few other things. I think that we could do, you know, informational sessions where we raise awareness in the community for things that our students are facing right now. I know we like to think sometimes that Lowville or students here aren't facing some of the hardships that other districts, you know, that's a problem in another district, but it's you know, our students are facing things that I never dreamed of when I went to school. We could start some educational sessions, but also I think it's really important that we start going out into the community. It's one thing to be the hub of the community, which we are. Lowville is, and every school district in a rural community should be the hub of the community. But I think it's really important that our students start giving back to the community. You know, the community has always been supportive, 100%, of the district's initiatives and different, you know, aspects of the school. But in order to show that, you know, we're raising kids who want to go back into the community and give back, I think that we have to start pushing them out there and doing things that the greater good.
Water delivery.
What? Oh, all right. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
You mentioned that kids today are dealing with more difficult things than we had to deal with. And I guess I see the superintendent position as being that much more important today than maybe it was for perhaps a Bill Warmouth or prior.
Sure.
So my big concerns, I guess, for my girls coming up through Lowville is related to violence. And although violence has always been a concern, there's also national school shootings, and that has to be addressed. And the kids have to live under the guise of that. Even if it never comes close to us, they have to they have to experience the fear of it. And then devices and social media and not being able to disconnect. I'm wondering if you could speak specifically about things you've done in your current role as a superintendent or in the past that have addressed some of those issues of safety.
Absolutely. So as superintendent's first priority is safety, above all else. It's keeping the students safe no matter what. Oh,
Speak louder, please.
you're kind of back there, wait. All right. So sorry if I'm too loud, but so superintendent's primary role, the most important thing that we can do is to keep students safe. That's the #1 goal. I know that at Lowville, they've done a number of things, but I'll just talk specifically about Remsen, where I've been able to impact the safety a little bit more. Maybe I should come up there. So there are different programs different grants, different projects that you can do under New York State that help secure your facilities. They only go so far because security is very expensive. But one thing in Remsen, and I'm really interested in, I'm hoping that Lewis County does this, but I'll tell you what Oneida County does. Oneida County and the Oneida County Sheriff's Department and the Oneida County Executive have an agreement that the county will pay for half of an SRO or an SPO, and the district pays for the other half. So an SPO is a special patrol officer, and right now it would cost the district $17,000 a year. Now I know one person isn't going to solve all the safety problems in the district, but I'm telling you, the research is very clear on having a presence, having a person there who is in uniform does two different things that are very important. First, it acts as a deterrent. Just having the person there acts as a deterrent for anyone who is planning to come to the district and do any harm. But more importantly, I think it's a person that students connect with that's not part of the school. Because whether we like it or not, there are students who just, they don't feel comfortable at school. And no matter how hard we try or how hard we reach out, if you're associated with the school, sometimes they just have a hard time connecting with you. So that is often a person that students who are considered at risk or who aren't engaged in sports or clubs kind of gravitate to. So that sometimes acts as a deterrent as well. And also we want our kids connecting with as many people as possible, as many good adult role models. Social media is, I tell you, my whole family changed the minute I let my oldest daughter have a phone. And it was, it's something anyone my age or older, or around my age or older, this is just uncharted territory in terms of being a parent. Because I wasn't born with a device in my hand. I mean, I would think of my children a device when they're little, but they are constantly worried about their friends. They're constantly focused on what other people are doing. And they're also portraying, I hope I'm not telling too much about my kids, but they're also portraying this life that isn't really as good as what they're saying on social media. So there's always this competition among students to show their happiest moment or the most friends. I think that's very troublesome for me particularly. I don't have the answer for that, but I'd love to try to get to the bottom of that. I know, the social emotional well-being of our students is, maybe I was not privy to it when I was in school, but what I see, as a principal and now superintendent, the needs of our students are so much greater than when I went to school. And we're trying to continually meet those needs. If we can do it through social media, that's great. I don't know how to, that's a parent and school kind of partnership. So maybe we can create a task force.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I'll just piggyback real quick, because I just think it's so important. The research is showing more and more that there's a direct correlation between the amount of social media time that a student has and depression and suicide. The research is coming out every year to show that more time in front of the screen, in front of Facebook, in front of Instagram, the higher rates of depression, the higher rates of suicide. And I guess I'm ignorant and incredulous to why the devices enter the school in the first place. And I'm sure there's a lot of different answers for that. I'm wondering if you could speak to just your experience of, are there regulations that can be placed on the student use?
We have a couple of, there are a couple of problems with that. And I can tell you, I faced that as a high school principal, trying to ban them from school, and it is a losing battle. They will hide it anywhere. And unless you're physically checking students, it's almost impossible to stop that from happening. I think that teachers, they have quite a task ahead of them because they have to continually monitor if students are on their phones. Although I've never seen anyone look down at nothing and go like this, obviously there's something in your hand. But I do think it's such a distraction, and I have seen, I am constantly hacking into my daughter's social media accounts. And I'll see pictures that kids post of them in class saying, I'm bored, text me. Oh my gosh. So, you know, we have to come up with something that's reasonable. You know, we don't want to alienate kids totally. So if they say, you don't understand me at all, you know, this is my lifeline. Especially for kids living in poverty. If they get that, that's a serious status symbol. So to not let anybody have them, I think is a balancing act. But it's definitely, the social media thing is so distracting. I mean, I hear stories of kids who get to keep their phones in their rooms at night, and they're waking up every hour and a half to dings. I mean, that can't be good. If we could have parents sign a contract that they won't let that happen. Education maybe is our best avenue.
Can you talk a little bit more about the issue of, I don't want to belabor this, but the issue of school violence, other than an officer in the school, you know, or other things? Because we've been very fortunate in this area. I think that all of us in this room, you know, can't help but think when you see an episode on the news or in the newspaper, you know, that there might be a possibility of something like that coming near to us.
Right.
So, I mean, is there any other alternatives other than a police officer in the school?
So you do everything you can to protect the perimeter, and I think Lowville in particular is doing a good job with having a single point of entry. You have to buzz in, they have to see your face in order to come in. The problem is, as we all know, up until 8 o'clock, the doors are wide open, and then after 3, the doors are wide open, because you don't want to block the community out of your school. So it's a tricky situation. Yeah, getting a school resource officer, an SPO, is not the ultimate answer. One thing I do know, you can't protect your students 100% of the time. So Lowville has an open campus. That might be something that people consider at some point to look at. I, as a superintendent, now when I was a student, I loved it. And I'm not saying we're going to stop letting kids leave for lunch by any means, but now when I drive by Lowville and I see the students walking down the street, I think, oh my gosh, are they going to make it back? So that's a parent thing maybe, and we do have to balance protecting our students and then giving them some autonomy to take, you know, be mature and see if they can experience the big city of Lowville on their own. But in terms of protecting from an active shooter, the only thing you can do is keep the person from entering the building. I mean, I know you have protocols in place. Every school district does for lockdown. I know that you have other special security measures. They have some, well, they have buttons and whatnot for lockdown. So that's fantastic. Making sure staff is trained, making sure they know how to fight back is important. But I mean, you never know. You just can't ever, you just assume that's never going to happen. But you have to be as prepared as possible if it does.
My question is connected to mental health in the schools. You already mentioned the social emotional well-being of our kids and how much that is impacting our kids now compared to years ago.
Yeah.
So my question is, what are you doing now in your current district to work with the kids and provide them with support, and how would you carry that over here at Lowville?
Sure. One thing we're trying to do, well, obviously more social workers is the first thing, and it's money well worth spending because they have different skills than I do, of course, in talking with students and helping them. Any kind of community resource that you can use to help students. But I think what's also really important is connecting all of your students with an adult in your school. So it's not just, I mean, our athletes have coaches, our club people, our people have advisors, but there's this big group of kids who go home and they play video games, or they're just disconnected from school. And I mean, I'm not saying that all of those people have social, emotional issues, but I think the more you can get them engaged with an adult in school, I think that it's very powerful. I mean, our family's not, I'm not saying it's the good old days when I graduated, because we had a lot of broken families and a lot of problems. We're a rural school and we face some things that are tough to face, but I just see it more now as a superintendent. There are a lot of hurt, injured kids that have a lot of trauma, and their needs are not being met at home, so we have to meet them at school.
And are you open to, like we talk about school, you come to do reading, writing, arithmetic. There's sometimes where a student comes into a classroom and they can't do reading, writing, arithmetic because of whatever happened last night at home, or they didn't have breakfast.
Yeah.
Or so our teachers need training and how to handle that. Are you open to those, providing those supports and services to the teachers?
Definitely. I was talking about with the administrative group specifically about poverty, but that was just one area. And I said, no one will ever say, you know what that kid needed more of? Remedial math help. It's like, no, that's not the answer. You need to meet their basic needs. They need to feel validated, appreciated. They need a predictable classroom, a predictable environment at school. And they need to know all the teachers care about them. And I know that we have a couple of teachers here who care about everyone, because my daughter has them and she loves them. But so we have great faculty. We just have to teach now more on how to connect with students at a very basic level. Just love them.
Looking in the future, obviously our tax income is going to be coming down due to the pilot programs. I know in Remsen the tax rate's about double what it is in Lowville now.
Yeah.
What kind of experience have you had in cost cutting issues?
Yeah, I've actually been asked that question every single committee. So, but the answer is a little bit different depending on who I talk to. So Lowville has been very fortunate that they haven't had to live necessarily in the world that every other district has had to live in. And I'm telling you from experience, my district is facing a budget deficit, a gap. We did last year, we are this year, we're going to next year. So every year we have to not, if someone retires, we can't replace them. We have to keep absorbing, we have to keep consolidating. And at some point, hopefully the governor will be a little looser with the purse strings, because that would really help us. But it's not, and most districts do face that. So what you have to do is you have to consider, you have to prioritize, obviously. And you have to think, what's going to impact students the least? That's always your first priority. What we did at Remsen is, I don't want to say too much, but we made sure every single department made a cut so that it was across the board. The Board of Education made a cut to their budget, administration did, teachers did, CSEA, transportation, just so that we're sending the message to the taxpayers. We're working really hard together as a unit to make sure that we're bringing the costs down. We're going to make sure that we pass a very responsible budget. We'll make sure you get your STAR rebate and check, whatever that is called. So being fiscally conservative is sort of in my blood now. I'm not a miser necessarily, because anything that benefits students, if it exposes them to diversity or any sort of experience outside of Remsen, and I would be the same way with Lowville, I would really like to support that. But if it isn't instructional, if it isn't necessary, those are the first things that unfortunately have to go. So the taxpayers will, community has always been very supportive of Lowville, and I don't expect that to change as long as we're being very responsible with the money and we're keeping the levy at a reasonable amount. Is that
I think so.
okay? Sometimes it's been a long day. I've been talking a lot. I can't believe I have anything else to say.
I'm Dixie Lane, a community member. How will you handle the fine line between parental involvement and the interference in their child's special ed program?
So are you asking what role, where do I see a parent fitting into informing the special ed program for their child?
How much do I become involved?
Yeah.
Or am I interfering?
No. No, you're not interfering. Oh my gosh. And maybe it would have been a different answer if I weren't a parent, but you have absolutely every right. I mean, annual meetings, that's why you're there, that's why you come. You're not just a rubber stamp to sign off, okay, I agree with this program. You have to be an informed stakeholder, because that's why it's called an individualized education plan. If not, they'd be in the general schedule, and even that kind of need a sign off in high school. So yeah, you have to be an informed member, and you should never be afraid to ask for more information, ever. Ask for credentials, ask for schedule, ask for anything you need to, because your child's education is, I mean, that's your first priority. It's our first priority too. So no, I don't think that that's interfering. Some people have more informational needs than other people. It doesn't mean you're micromanaging.
Becky, you mentioned your long day, and Mr. Todd mentioned our students and how they asked some great questions. Anything memorable or anything interesting that you were asked today?
Yeah. So one student asked me how we could get the community to support sports more. And I thought, what? I was at Binghamton for that basketball game. I don't think there is more support. No, it was very sweet. So they had representatives from a lot of different groups there. And I was so lucky to start my day with the students, because it really sort of sets the tone. They asked some great questions. Let's see. They asked about sports. They asked about leadership, which is fantastic. I mean, students are already having this heart for leadership, which is very exciting to me. Obviously, I'm a little skewed. I'd like to see more women. Maybe I could create a club like that, women leaders. We don't have enough of them. But they were very articulate. I couldn't believe the questions they came up with. I was so impressed with their maturity. So it was fantastic. It made me very happy. You could tell with each different committee, you know, what their passion was and what they were very focused on. So it was fantastic to meet with them as well. And they were all different. I mean, the budget came up each time. You can tell that's really weighing on their mind, and I think that we have to be very responsive to that and very transparent and communicate often, because I think there's a lot of angst. I could sort of feel that. And just to make sure everybody knows we're going to get through this together. We're in it as a family. Yeah, it was very eye-opening. And I was surprised how many students I knew in the hallway. Just thought I'd say that. I was like, oh, I know everybody. Not everybody. And I have to tell you, 3 board members up there have been here all day long, too. So, thank you. Thank you. I mistook one for an administrator, sorry.
Becky, having 2 girls that will likely be raised by this school, I'm very interested in hearing you say more about women in leadership, what it would mean to have a school that empowers girls, that encourages them to speak up, that combats sexism.
Yep, absolutely. I am very passionate about that topic. When I got into teaching, it wasn't, you know, I guess, without getting too personal, you know, I grew up, I was the youngest of 7. So I was always very vocal, but very rarely paid attention to. And I think that, you know, I never honed any of these leadership skills. I was always just sort of went with the flow, and I started to be a teacher, and it wasn't until I really got into the workforce that I started to notice that there are different people making decisions all the time, and they weren't me. So I kind of, like to just do my own thing, teach and go home, and then I started to notice that the leaders that I saw weren't anything like me. And this is nothing, I'm not saying anything against the men in this room. I'm married to a wonderful man who's very supportive. But see, I had to qualify how I felt. So anyway, through going through leadership, women are faced with some obstacles that took my breath away. And I won't go into detail about that. I will tell you one thing. During an interview once, I was asked what my husband thought of me and what he thought of staying home with the kids more. It's like, would you have asked my husband that question? Probably not. So anyway, that one didn't work out. So I was thinking, like, a couple of things I was thinking about. If I get this position, I have more time to spend in the community. I won't be in another community as much. So I was thinking I wanted to do a couple of things. A student leadership group would be fantastic, especially for young women. Start them young so that they learn that they have a voice and that they're supported. They have people who support them. But also I'd love to do sort of a women's initiative off of campus for our community, because I think we have a lot of powerful women here who don't necessarily always use their voice. And I see that sometimes with my friends, and I see that other times. It's funny sometimes with women, if you say what you mean and you say how you feel, people use different adjectives for you than if you were a man doing the same thing. So I'd love to start changing that just in the general region. You can be outspoken and not be crabby. It's all right.
Since we're talking about women in the school district or girls, what is your thoughts about co-ed swimming for middle school students and the whole policy? Like, what is your take on if they miss swim? How should that be made up? What should they be doing during the swim period when they are missing swim?
I think I understand.
Or like they're going through puberty.
Yeah.
So
they have co-ed swim now? I should know.
Yes, they have co-ed swim.
Okay. I know that some people are very uncomfortable with that in middle school. And there are some models that you should look into sometime of, not that I definitely want to do this, but of splitting boys and girls in middle school, just for middle school, letting them get through that time separately. And they actually, both boys and girls perform higher when they're not constantly looking at each other. But I feel badly for those young ladies who are incredibly uncomfortable in that kind of situation. So I think if there's any way, schedule-wise, you could have both. You could have girls who aren't uncomfortable have a co-ed class, but if you have a group of middle school girls who really just, it's devastating to them, then why can't we have an all-girls swim class? I feel like it should be an easy problem to solve. Swim with girls. I don't know.
Well, it's not here, so.
Yeah.
I'm speaking from experience.
Okay.
My daughter in middle school.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just curious as to what your take was on that.
I'd love to look into that.
And one other question about technology and piggybacking on the social media. So, again, having a middle schooler who is now in her second year, when we came in and found that, okay, everyone's going to be coming home with computers, and they're taking all their assignments are on there, so we don't have any idea what is going on as parents. Couple questions. What is your feeling, or how do you think parents should be involved, like at that level? We do have an orientation, but it wasn't satisfactory to me because, again, I went home not knowing anything about what they were doing on the computer. And secondly, they have something called Google Hangouts. So they're able to actually...
They're chatting with each other.
Chatting in class. And when I inquired about that, could we actually turn that off? I was told that wasn't that wasn't able to be done.
Huh.
So I'm curious, and do they use that in Remsen, like computers? Do they
We use
have-
Google. We use Google
Can you
Classroom.
turn off, hang off? or-
I actually don't know that answer, but I do know what I do at home is I make, my children think I'm crazy. I make them sit at the table while they're doing their work so their screens are facing me. It's like a stoppo, I swear. So that's the way I do it. And I was naive at first, and I let my daughter use her computer in her bedroom doing her homework. It was nice and quiet, and I walk in and she's chatting with everyone. All right. So, parents have to be really vigilant in terms of social media and electronics, but one-to-one devices, especially for students who don't have access to anything, can be very beneficial for them. So yeah, that is a balancing act for a parent, for sure.
Becky, I have a question.
Sure.
Different, just a generality about, I have a passion here at Lowville for the FFA and the ag program. And the board here has been wonderfully supportive of all of it, and the staff helping with different things when the school hosted the state convention, and then when they did their food project where a lot of staff helped with that. Are you supportive of agricultural programs? And there seems to be in the last few years some students that were traditional mainline students looking at college prep classes, doing that, that run, but are finding that ag programs satisfy not so much an academic need, but a personal need, and they struggle with this decision because if I take a class in ag, I might short myself at the end of my senior year, and it's a struggle. But as been talked about here, the ag programs and the FFA program is one of the best leadership programs around, and it is being used nationwide by more girls than males, and that's a trend that's just happening, which is wonderful. I'm just, are you supportive of it?
Oh my gosh. So I was the high school principal of Beaver River for 6 years.
Yes.
And we had the Ladews who came through. Prior to that, I was sort of under the old impression that farmers do FFA, and that's so wrong. Olivia and Anna, my two oldest, are in FFA. And there are so many fantastic reasons to support this program, and one of them is leadership. I mean, they teach you how to public speak, they teach you how to write essays, they teach you how to interview, on all those skills that come along with it. They have conventions that are, competing against other school districts and learning how to compete in a way that they're not vicious, like it's a nice competition, which we want kids to learn. So I'm 100% supportive of FFA. I think it's just a wonderful organization. I can't say enough about it. I could go on, but yeah.
Thank you.
If I heard that Remsen has a ag workforce type of program, is that something you could tell us about?
Yeah, well, we have, so one of the things that I did when I got there is we designed in our capital project a brand new ag facility. Well, actually a CTE facility. We did ag, technology, art, and home and careers. Brand new facility. Just got finished, and it's beautiful. Because we were noticing that our students, and this is just for our demographic there, I'm not saying it would work everywhere, but a lot of our students stay, they're farmers, they love it, and we wanted to give them a facility that was respectful of their abilities. You can always tell what a district prioritizes by just walking through their building, right? You can see where they're putting their money. And wherever they're putting their money is what they think usually is the most important. So, just remember that. So anyway, our ag program is growing. We got a grant for a high tunnel, and it was our STEAM club. We wrote a grant. We have this high tunnel, so we're planting our own food. We're trying to be, we'll never get to the point where we can, just use that for lunch, but we're using that, and we are doing internships with dairy producers, with farms, and it's been hugely successful so far. And I would just keep an eye on that program. I bet in like 5 or 6 years it's gonna just explode.
Becky, I'm curious, working in Remsen and living in Lowville,
Mm-hmm.
do you see a difference in the school culture? And what would you support in our culture here, and what would you like to see change?
So there's definitely a difference. Every school sort of has a thumbprint, and so my experience with Lowville, I can't talk too much about what I've changed because I haven't been here in 22 years. No time, buddy, that. But I can tell you that as far as community support goes, you will not find many districts that have as much support. People turning out for events and supporting students. So I definitely never want to block out our community by any means. So again, anything that I would want to change that I just see at first, I mean, I'll learn a lot more as years go on, but any opportunity we have for our students to almost seek out diversity. I want to put them in situations where they're engaging with people who look nothing like them, who believe nothing that they believe, and teach them how to engage with each other in a productive manner. I told the students today, I sort of went along this line of, we want to start asking you, what problem do you want to solve, as opposed to what do you want to be when you grow up. So they don't know what they want to be. I asked Thomas what he wanted to be, and he told me he wanted to be a bowler. So maybe, I don't know. But you start asking a question of what problem do you want to solve, and you get to the heart of what the child is passionate about. And so you're much more likely to make a connection for that student into a career. Because you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they start saying a doctor, because they make a lot of money, right? They don't know that they'll like it. They're just basing their ideas. Anyway. And I also told them, when you engage with people who don't think like you think, or don't come from the background that you come from, don't act like the people on TV, on the news. That's not how we're supposed to treat each other. That's not how we're supposed to, engage in discourse. So if we can teach them how to be civic ready, truly civic ready, to really understand that you're going to meet people with vastly different opinions, but you still have to learn how to engage with them in a productive manner. See, you asked me a question, I ended up on the other side of the room, sorry.
I have something that piggybacks on what we've been discussing. So, over the last decade, there's been a very large push for college. And obviously college is fantastic and wonderful, and it can lead to great careers. However, there are a lot of students that college is not for them.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, over the years, students that don't go to college suddenly feel like they're not successful.
Right.
Or they're not going to have great things in their lives. Electricians and plumbers and welders and carpenters and all of these careers that are so important and so valuable. What can we do to encourage students to follow those paths and to understand that just because they don't go to college doesn't mean that they're not successful and that they can't have a wonderful life?
Yeah.
So what could we do to kind of encourage that?
So you sort of have to start with the message, and the message has to be from the top down, that we encourage all sorts of jobs here. We are going to prepare you for whatever you want to do. So I know they talk about college and career ready, and I said we also have to add civic ready, because that's an incredible, important part. did you know that the average tech manual for an electrician, the reading level of that is higher than what you would get if you were a junior in college in an ELA class? So don't tell me they're not ready for college, or that they somehow are not as smart or as capable. So you're right, we have to remove the stigma, and I think it takes years of repeating the message that you don't have to, not everyone has to go to a 4-year university and end up with a degree in liberal arts and $500,000. I'm just making up that money. But it's possible, and it happens, and then they all end up back home. It's not happening. So yeah, I think it's important to connect them early with whatever interest they have. Connect them with opportunities. Let's say they do internships at craft, or they do some sort of fellowship. We can create our own fellowships. I went to a conference where someone from Apple, who was incredibly engaging, of course, was talking about how even college credentialing is going to change soon. That Ford is starting to make their own engineers. So they're taking kids who have really high aptitude for math and science out of high school, out of their first year in college. They're saying, you don't need to get an engineer degree from there. Work for us, we're going to make our own engineers. So we have to remember that that's a reality, and that's going to start happening. So, you take their strengths, build on those, and open up as many avenues as you possibly can for them. Is that loud enough for you, Mrs. McAvoy? No? I'm sorry. I'll talk to you. Yeah, come down here. No, stay up there for the next one.
We're approaching the end of our time together here, but if someone has, a final thought or question, or Becky, if you've got a final thought you'd like to leave the group with, I want to give you time for that.
I have a final question. You're going to be working, Becky, with so many different groups, administrators, the finance office. Can you give us, a very brief idea of how you see the first 3 months? What would you be doing? How would you be interacting with people to get to know the people that are here? Obviously, I think it's very positive that you say you know so many of the students, because I think through the years, the fact that our administrators have been able to walk down the hall and call somebody by their name is just very important.
It is.
But I also think that you've got so many other different people that you're going to be working with.
Sure.
The bus drivers, the people in the cafeteria, your administrators at your finance office, as well as the students.
Right.
So how do you see that go?
Yeah, so in my entry plan that the board has, I dedicate first from the point I start in the summer for the entire year on doing a listening tour. So it's hard for me, as you can tell, close my mouth, but I really just want to listen. I want to listen to people about what's going well, what highlights are of the district. Being a community member myself, I know some things, but I don't know what initiatives are happening in the district. So I want to meet with all these different constituents. At Remsen, I have a superintendent student advisory committee that I meet with once a month. They love it. I take them out to lunch, and then they tell me all about what's happening in the school. Because one thing that happens when you're a superintendent, you get removed from the students, and I can't stand that. At any rate, so that's one example. So you've got to make sure you're making time to sit with people and just listen. You don't have to have the answer right away. Just listen to them. I think that's critically important. And I think it's also very important that whoever comes in doesn't change things right away. You can't just come in and start, bulldozing people, because there's a history here. You want to make sure you understand where all the little pieces fit before you start moving anything around.
Thank you, Becky, and thank you all. I'll be right back. I'll just escort Becky out, and I'll give you about 10 minutes or so here so you can collect any thoughts you